Nice to see you. Chair Barber and, of course, Co-Chair Roush, and members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you very briefly about S548 and H915, which is an act expanding access to trails for people of all abilities. And here my partner is the wonderful Representative Ciccolo, and S549 and H1005, which is an act investing in natural and working lands. And I heard that the wonderful Representative Jo Ciccolo was here, so I think she probably wowed you. So I'll just be very quick, and of course I'm happy to take your questions. So this is the second session that Rep. Ciccolo and I filed a bill to improve outdoor trail accessibility. So at a time where so many, well, hi Chair Roush, turn to the outdoors, fewer than 10% of trails on state land 10% of trails on state land are accessible. And this, of course, presents a real barrier for people of all abilities, for caregivers, for people in wheelchairs, to be able to access safe and restorative outdoor spaces. The Massachusetts Office of Outdoor Recreation estimates that 33 to 47% of Massachusetts residents would benefit from accessible trails. That's extraordinary. Now, since we first filed this bill, the Rep and I, the Healey Driscoll administration, thanks to the wonderful work of its outdoor recreation leader, has launched the Trails for All initiative to jumpstart the work, and this has a wonderful cadre of advocates behind it as well. So this codifies and builds upon the administration's work by establishing a permanent advisory council and trust fund. So it has broad support. Second, and I don't want to outstay my welcome, I just want to turn to an act in investing in natural and working lands. So this bill helps to implement the goals laid out in the Resilient Lands Initiative, the Forests Climate Solutions Initiative, the statewide Farmland Action Plan, and our 5-year Clean Energy Climate Plan. So according to Mass Audubon, in the 5-year period between 2012 and 2017, Massachusetts lost 29,929 acres of forest. Between 2017 and 2022, Massachusetts lost farmland at twice the national rate, losing approximately 27,000 acres. These are, I can't even get my mind around the amount of forest and farmland we are losing currently. So we know this, and you as chairs and committee know this better, the benefits, the health benefits, the ecosystem benefits of natural and working lands, except our Commonwealth has no net loss policy to prevent further loss of our natural and working lands. So this bill includes a number of policy changes to support our natural and working lands, including tasking state agencies with preventing the conversion of natural and working lands when there are alternative options. Right? We create, in fact, I was just listening to someone yesterday that said we just need an order of operation when we think about building houses. Can we have an order of operation that helps us weigh these benefits? Creating a local opt-in program similar to Green Communities for natural and working lands friendly communities, and adjusting MEPA's threshold for an environmental review that would allow MEPA to align with our conservation goals. These are not new ideas. They've been tested and reported and reported and reported. So the Rep and I just bundled them up into this bill. So you are going to become the architects of the Mass Ready Act. And so we would just ask respectfully that if this bill doesn't come out favorably, if you could consider some of the provisions in this bill that would bundle up the best recommendations from these plans that have just frankly sat too long on the shelf. And put them into play so that we really value carbon sequestration, we value natural and working lands for their food provision, and we are able to prioritize them in the right sequence, the right order. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Nice to see you. Questions from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Oh, Chair Barber, and then we'll go to Vice Chair Cataldo.
Thank you so much, Senator. Could you just briefly talk about what you see as kind of the biggest gaps or the challenges in accessibility in the first bill that you talked about right Sure. now? Well, I'm actually going to tell you a terrible story. which is that I had a constituent, her name is Meg. She came to me about 5 years ago. She lives her life in a wheelchair because of a chronic illness. And she asked me, Jo, do you know where around here in Western Massachusetts you can go if you live your life in a wheelchair and be on a universally accessible trail for people like me and for 45% of the Commonwealth? And I knew some, but I didn't know much more than that. And I realized that I hadn't been tuned in to universal accessibility as Meg was calling me to be. And so I got involved. And I had a conversation with some of our colleagues in the administration at the time. This is years ago. And I asked, can you tell me the percentage of universally accessible trails? And they couldn't. And then I asked, can you tell me how you score grant applications? Can you tell me, are you really thinking about universally accessible, which I have come to learn a lot about, as not just a nice flat surface, but really rollable in many ways, or for hearing impaired or sight impaired folks, right? All these different factors that universal accessibility means. And they couldn't tell me that their grant scoring card would have understood the need for this. And so then I asked, can you tell me if there's a program that would help you prioritize universal accessibility? And there was none. And then I started hearing from folks mostly in the disability community who heard I was tuning in, and they talked to me about their own experiences. So to your very good question, Chair, I think the first excellent work of Paul Janahy, Director Janahy, and his team has been simply to raise the awareness and make a commitment to knowing what universal accessibility is, and then making goals that will align, because these are public trails, so paid for by tax dollars of our constituents on public land. And so thus land that should be accessible to all. So that was the first major barrier. They're cracking that open, but they have work to do, and they want to do that work with great advocates. And I think the second thing is establishing a set, this is why the advisory committee is really important, right? We need a group of folks to tell us what accessibility looks like. Is this really truly accessible for a whole range of lived experiences? And that's where we have to listen deeply to those with lived experience, because even though the outdoor recreation folks want to get this right, and that's the first thing, and they want to crack it open and understand the problem, they need the guidance from the people with lived experience to make sure they're really getting as close and as feeling the urgency like they need to, and getting it right.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on the senator's very insightful and knowledgeable comments to say a couple of months, what is time anyway? I recently took a walk in the woods on a trail with thanks to the advocates, some of whom are in the room today, who invited me to join them on this walk on a trail that was supposed to be accessible, and there were boards missing and things are falling apart, and it's just in a state of disrepair. So the issue is very real.
Yeah. And the Appalachian Mountain Club did the same thing. God, they're great advocates. And they did the same thing.
Sitting over there.
They did the same thing. I meant to say your name earlier. They did the same thing in Western Massachusetts. And I tell you, it was something beautiful to be able to be in a great diversity of people and be able to walk or roll and talk and not leave anybody behind and have people feel equal among each other, right? To be able to experience this gorgeous place. Yeah. And it was some of the best organizing I've ever seen. And it got me, I was like, okay, well, I was already doing this bill, and now I'm really doing this bill. And so we're really grateful. Governor Healey, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, they're rock stars, right? They're doing this. We just want to enshrine it into law so that another administration will keep that commitment.
I'll add, which is something I think Rep. Cataldo also could speak to, and we'll go to you momentarily, that it also benefits people with very young children who are working with strollers, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really everyone, right?
Yeah.
In some trails, I was just at an event, there's sight impaired, there's hearing impaired, right? There are things, people know things that are smarter than me, and they understand what accessibility looks like.
Mr. Vice Chair. Good question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd add people who are sleep deprived from having young children and might not see a rock or a branch or a root. So thank you so much. The testimony is very helpful. The answers to the questions very helpful. Also, thanks to my friend Michelle Ciccolo for working on this as well. I know she's chair of one of the chairs of the Trails Caucus. So wanted to just note, first of all, that all of us who were here last session, so grateful that we included in our budget a big all-persons trail in the town of Concord with your colleague in the Senate, Mike Barrett. We worked on that and got to go out and see that, and everything you're saying really resonates. So I live in Concord, and it's funny how sometimes we have bills that really gin up a lot of attention, and we have passionate advocates on both sides of this bill, for and against, and the concern of those who either are against or maybe they're urging caution about the bill is concerns that the bill is going to result in many of our treasured trails getting paved over or otherwise modified in ways that will significantly change the character of the trail for human enjoyment, but also impact wildlife in ways that aren't intended. And I think the folks who are advocating on both sides are certainly doing so in good faith and for good reason. So I'm just wondering if you can help me out a little bit and help kind of explain how you would talk to the folks who are concerned about their and others' enjoyment of trails as a result of this bill, possibly?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've heard it too. So my inbox has received some of those, although the most of the emails we get is in the please do this side of the ledger. I think two things here. One is the bill allows the Office of Outdoor Rec, in association with advisors, to make some decisions, right? And I think we need to trust our great colleagues there to understand the state's entirety of its resources and what needs to be preserved as is and what could benefit from accessibility. And they would do that in partnership with advocates, right? Both folks from the disability community and then the other differing ability communities and the outdoor rec folks, right? And leaders and conservationists. So this is all to say that it doesn't automatically say all trails are paved. It says, let's create a diversity of outdoor experiences to make sure they're equitably rendered across the Commonwealth for our people. So for example, the same constituent, Meg, asked me if I had any idea, she's such a good advocate, how many feet of trails could go by the sea that she could get to in a wheelchair. And of course I didn't know that at the time. I do now, by the way, because of Meg. And so I think this would allow that kind of due diligence. How can you get to the Atlantic in the North Shore, the South Shore, on the Cape? Can we create experiences so that they can be felt equitably? It's not saying that every single one of the trails by the sea will be immediately made accessible. That's number one. Number two, for these outdoor enthusiasts, what I've come to learn is that there are many ways to make trails accessible that do not hurt the natural environment, do not hurt biodiversity. They're a little expensive, but we're able to do things that are, with fine crushed stone and other things that actually level out a surface where it becomes more accessible. It doesn't hurt that kind of outdoor feel. It just basically lets you go over the roots, in a sense, right? And that's not necessarily marring the biodiversity. It is opening up that biodiversity to be experienced by all. And other smarter people in this space may have better things to say, but those are among the things that I say. I think the outdoor rec folks and the group of advisors, we can trust them to make very good decisions for us.
Thank you.
Generally.
Thank you.
Additional question, Representative?
Yeah, so when you were saying earlier that approximately 10% of the trails are accessible.
That's what we understand currently, yeah.
So what percentage are you looking for to make it more equitable?
Well, again, this is the good thing about this bill, I think, is it leaves us, so as a legislator, right, I'm a generalist. I don't know what are industry good standards. I don't know where these trails are necessarily. So this bill allows for a group of advisors to work with the administration to achieve what is equitable. So it would be wrong for me, Representative, right now to say, oh, it's this percentage, without knowing exactly where these trails are, what kind of accessibility we're talking about on these trails, the cost of them, which I think is real, things like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
what we do know is the number I mentioned, which is upwards of 45% of our people need universal accessibility, which says something.
Okay, so along those lines, being an outdoor enthusiast myself, being a part of International Mountain Biking Association and different things like that, a lot of the trails that we have are maintained by volunteers
Sure,
of
yeah.
these different groups. And as far as creating trails and the needs for getting the equipment necessary, I mean, we're talking about, if you're talking about making a trail that is rollable throughout the whole trail, you're looking at the potential of having to use trucks or even wheelbarrows to bring materials in. Has there been any discussions as far as manpower and how some of these, especially out west, where it's where the trails are a lot more rugged compared to on the East Coast, how that would occur, how these trails could be updated?
Sure. Thank you for bringing Western Massachusetts into it. Out my way, snowmobilers do a huge amount of trail maintenance, especially in the Quabbin watershed. And they are the reason that a lot of us can get out in the winter, because they've done that work on the trails, and it's all volunteer, as you say. I think this bill, this effort in the administration, again, led by Director Janahy and a wonderful cadre of advisors and advocates, is pretty nascent. Right, they're just getting their arms around what percentage of the Commonwealth trails are universally accessible. They're hearing from the diverse range of folks who would like greater accessibility. And they, like other agencies, would have a budget within which to work. And with that budget, they would make some decisions. Again, it's not like a boom, all trails will be paved. We're going to try our best to expand the opportunity for folks. And within that, I'm sure they would want to work with stakeholder groups. This is one of the best things about the cadre of individuals now, consulting. We have our good friends over here who are leading the way with so much of the outdoor recreation and the climate intersection. And then we have other enthusiasts. We have snowmobilers and others. And then we have the folks in communities of elders or this disability rights community. And they all would come together and help influence the outcome. And this is a good thing, right? It's all upside, I think, within fiscal constraints. It's not going to get an unlimited budget. So they'd have to make the choices within that budget. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
The bill contemplates both a working group and an advisory council. Can you help us to understand why we need both?
It's a good question. Initially, when drafted, and your wisdom may see differently, initially when drafted, so much was done. The working group was really boots on the ground. Let's work with the administration to really go out, investigate, bring back information. And the advisory group was asking the question, are we getting this right? Did we get this right? Does this feel good? Does this feel good? What did we miss? Because accessibility, as everybody knows, is super personal. And there's so many areas of accessibility, we need to listen deeply. So perhaps, Director Janahy and his great crew would tell you now, actually, we know enough, and we just need advisors to guide us. So it's actually an excellent question.
Okay, we'll keep the conversation open with you and with our colleagues in the administration as we continue to consider this bill. Any further questions from the committee?
Wow, great questions.
Okay, terrific.
Thank you,
Senator.
I appreciate your time, chairs and committee.
Thank you.